Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh. I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. So today's webinar is part of our leadership team series of webinars, and we're going to go through really the tools and reports that many of the leadership team use on their day-to-day activity of making sure the chapter is updated and keeping track of the statistics and the attendance and the POMs and the speaker rotation and all that wonderful stuff that we get to do as part of the leadership team. So we're going to show you how to do that in BNI Connect, where to access it, what it looks like, what happens, all of that sort of thing. Before we get started with that, I just want to give a couple of very quick housekeeping tips, and first of which is that if you're listening today, you're here with me on April 4th, 2017. That means that you are part of a live webinar. That means that you can ask questions as we're going through all this stuff today. Feel free to ask questions, and if you're not sure about something or you have a comment to make or anything, just drop that into the questions box, just like George did. George says, good day, Jeremy. And George, a good day to you too, and thank you for being here on the webinar. Elsie says, go Badgers. So thank you guys so much for joining me today here on this webinar. So if you happen to be listening to this webinar in the future, I'd either like to borrow your DeLorean, or that means that you're listening to a recording. So if you're listening to a recording, you manage to find it on either the support site. You can find them on support.bniconnect.com, or you can find them on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is BNI Connect Global. Again, that's youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. All right, just one other quick thing for today's webinar. That is that I did put a handout in the handout section. That handout is going to include basically walkthroughs of a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about today and more. So there's actually more stuff in that walkthrough than we are going to cover today. If you'd like to download that, just click on the downloads link in the go-to webinar, that little fold out thing. That's where you'll find it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, one other just quick caveat, if you will, specific to this particular webinar, and that is that BNI is a very diverse group of people around the world, and over the years, different areas have had autonomy to do things slightly differently in different regions. And let me just give you a quick example of that. In some regions, or I should say in many, many regions, most regions even, on a weekly basis, it is the chapter vice president that goes back, takes the attendance and any paper slips that might have been passed in and enters those into BNI Connect. All right, so that happens in most regions. However, in some regions, that's going to be they have a special position for that to help out the vice president because they have so many other responsibilities. It could be, a chapter, statistics tracker or something like that. Same thing with visitors. A lot of times it's going to be the visitor host that is the one that enters the visitors after a meeting. In some places it's going to be the secretary treasurer. So what I'm going to concentrate mostly on today is the functionality. So I'm not going to be here telling you, hey, it's the vice president's job to do that, or it's the secretary treasurer's job to do that. That's going to vary slightly by region at the discretion of your executive director. So if you have any questions about that type of process, the who does what, then I'd recommend, again, talking to your director consultant or talking with your executive director. They'll be the ones that can really help you through the who part of it as opposed to the how part of it. All right, so with all that said, let's go ahead and start poking around in BNI Connect and let's see what we can find. So the very first thing I want to show you guys is that the home screen here in BNI Connect, this is going to be mostly member level stuff. So this is the stuff that every member can see, every member can use. This is where we go on a weekly basis to enter things like our POMs reports. Now the review reports and everything, you have to keep in mind that those are all private to the member because they're going to contain potentially private client information, like client phone numbers, client names, client addresses, things like that, that are only really meant to be shared between the member and their referral partner. So we don't have access to any of this except on your own membership. Inevitably, though, you will have a member that comes to you and says, hey, things just aren't right. I gave more referrals than that, or I recorded a one-to-one and it's not showing up in my statistics. One of the best things you can do is ask them to please go in and either print their slips, or they can click on this My Personal Participation Report and be able to print that out. This Personal Palms report is going to show you the week-by-week activity for their membership. And what this does is it really allows them to be able to troubleshoot exactly where the error is. And it seems to be not popping up for me here for some reason. Let me see if I can restart that real quick. I know I was having internet issues all day yesterday. We actually had our internet people out here and they replaced our internet modem. So things have been marginally better since then, but for some reason it's not cooperating at the moment. Interesting. So anyway, let me move on from there. This would show you the week-by-week activity, and that's really helpful. Okay, so Elsie says it's not. Oh, here it comes. Yay! The report just popped up, so I don't know why that took so long. It usually pops up right away. So maybe there was like a little hiccup on the back end of the server there. So, whew, glad to see it's not broken. All right, so Elsie, thank you for playing along. Where this is really helpful, especially, is if all of a sudden somebody has, wow, they have 10,000 one-to-ones. Well, more than likely, they don't really have 10,000 one-to-ones, but you could easily see which week the accidentally, more than likely it's somebody put the thank you for closed business into the one-to-ones column, for example. So it's easier to troubleshoot that by knowing which week it is. And it also shows their attendance summary, their number of members sponsored, and any training that they've attended recently. All right, so again, this is mostly the member level functionality. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the leadership team type stuff that we're going to have to look at. So one thing that you need to know is that there is these other tabs here along the side. So the places that we get into this other stuff is these tabs and then these drop-down menus on the top. So this tab here for my network, again, this is mostly the networking stuff, but one thing that you will find really helpful under here is number one, the documents. This is going to be your region shared document. So if your like executive director is sharing, let's say, member traffic lights, or they're sharing a supply order form or things along those lines, this is the place that you're going to find it in this document library. The other helpful thing is in here is all the training events in a list format that are in your area. But the things I want to show you really are the things up here along the top. And Elsie says, do we get credit for these webinars? And absolutely. You want to make sure that you submit yourself a CEU slip and make sure that you give yourself 1 credit for a BNI webinar. All right, so make sure that you do give yourself credit for today's session. All right, so as I was saying, along the top here, we have all these drop-down menus, and that's really where all the functionality is in BNI Connect. So just to go through these real quick, the way I remember where to find stuff, we have the network here. That's really that social media function, a lot of the similar things that you'll find on that My Network tab. Operations and reports are really where you're going to spend the majority of your time and what we're going to concentrate on today. Operations is the input area of BNI Connect. Operations is input. Reports is read only. Operations input, reports read only. So if you're looking to enter something or you're looking to do something here in BNI Connect, almost always you're going to go to operations. If you're just looking to get stats and information and things like that, most likely the place you're going to go is reports. All right, so let's take a look and see what some of this stuff is. So first, let's go to the operations menu. And again, this is really where the day-to-day management of your chapter is going to be. It's going to be here under the operations menu. And you can see all the management functions, or the management categories, I should say, on the left-hand side. We have manage visitors, we have meeting management, we have manage memberships, manage goals, the mentoring program, create email, and manage news. I'm not going to go through all of these today, but we're going to touch on some of the most common ones here for most people in the system. So first thing I want to show you, actually, let's start from the bottom of the list here. I want to show you this create email function. The create email function is a really helpful one especially for leadership teams, because one thing that you'll find that you have to do quite often is to get in touch with your chapter. And this is the easiest way to really do that. I've always found that before BNI Connect, the way that I would send an email out to my chapter was to go and hit reply all on the last group message that I could find in my email. But you know what? It seemed to never go to the right people, because I'd always have somebody that came back and said, hey, I left the chapter 2 months ago. How come you're still emailing me? And you'd have the new member that didn't get it because they weren't on that list to begin with. So what you can do is use this email my chapter function. And this is a very quick copy and paste that will include your most current roster, so everybody that BNI Connect knows about as being active today at this exact moment. I can copy and paste their email addresses. Now, you do use your own email program for this. So I would start a new email. I highly recommend putting everybody in the BCC line. That way you don't get all the reply alls, and if it gets forwarded, it won't violate any privacy concerns of people. And then you just type your message and hit send, but you'll know at least it's going to all the right people. And of course, because you're using your own email program, you'll have sent items and full formatting and all of that kind of stuff. All right, so while we're in here, the next process I want to step through is really the whole visitor process in BNI Connect. And the visitor process is one of those processes where multiple people will be touching this along the way. And it starts all the way from the member, and it steps all the way through to the vice president. So the first step of that process is that we can invite somebody. And we do that, and by the way, members have access to this as well. And in the upcoming app that's coming out at the end of the month, you'll be able to invite people to your chapter right from the app as well. So we can do create email, email visitor invitation. All right, so this visitor invitation piece allows you to send an invitation to a potential visitor. And it's really easy to use. You just put in the visitor's name. Let's say John Smith from Smithco. Give them the visitor email address. So I'm going to send this to myself so you guys can see what this looks like. Now, by the way, you're welcome to send one of these to yourself as well. These aren't being tracked or anything like that. It's just a way to get a very simple email message out to a potential visitor that has some nice, branding and well-worded email. You can put a personal message at the top if you want to. It appears at the top of the invitation. So I can put something like, please be sure to RSVP for the meeting. And I can even put, Jeremy. All right, so I'm going to click send. And this will, put this into the template that we already have built into the background, and it will send that to me. All right, I should get that in about 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and here it is. Yay! So this is the email. It says, please be sure to RSVP for the meeting, Jeremy. How will you grow your business? Dear John, and it has some great information about BNI. It's really written with a person that's never been to a BNI meeting's perspective in mind. Has your chapter information and your details and where you meet and when you meet. Most importantly, it gives the visitor a chance to RSVP. Right, so this part of the process is crucial. Pre-registering people before the meeting. A visitor can pre-register themselves for the meeting, so they can pre-register themselves for, let's say, tomorrow's meeting. This is John Smith from Smith Co. And email address. And of course, we have to put in who invited them. Jeremy did. And a CAPTCHA code. All right, so we finally successfully registered. The cool thing is that they now get an email notification, and you guys on the leadership team also get a notification about this visitor showing up, which is awesome. Now you know when visitors are coming to your chapter. You know that they're going to be there. So here I got my "You are now officially confirmed to visit" email, and my chapter leadership team just got notified. All right, so now that is the visitor invitation. Now, if a visitor does not pre-register for the meeting, a member can also pre-register them by going into register a prospective visitor under manage visitors. So they can go in, they can register that prospective visitor. Essentially, it's the exact same process. It's just a form that gets filled out. It gives you access to fill out a couple more fields like the address, things like that. And it's just going to assume that you're the person that invited them. All right, so that is before the meeting. Now, what's awesome about this is that there's a report that shows you all of your visitors upcoming. This is great for visitors days, by the way. And on top of that, it makes whoever's recording the visitors after the meeting, it makes their life a whole lot easier, because I can't tell you how many times after, especially like a visitor's day, you take that visitor sign-in sheet back to your office and you have to decipher all the chicken scratch in order to enter it into BNI Connect and be able to, since that sends them the thank you notes and everything. If they have pre-registered, all you have to do is go to Manage Registered Visitors. And let's take a look at people that have been registered. So we had John Smith that's registered. And what I can do is instead of having to go in and type it all in, I just have to go in and click Edit. Let's say that he actually ended up showing up for the meeting. Again, we took our DeLorean into the future here. We had our meeting for tomorrow. All I need to do is do visitor attended. And do I want to add that visitor to the Palms? Now, you do have a choice there whether you want to add them to the Palms. There's reasons why you may not want to add visitor. By that means that you're giving the person that invited them credit. The thing to keep in mind is that when you give that person credit, it does affect the traffic lights, especially a particular thing called the conversion ratio. The conversion ratio it's the number of visitors to your chapter based on the Palms report, in other words, visitors that were added to the Palms report, divided by the number of new members in that time period. Usually it's over a 6-month period. So if you end up putting the same visitor in twice, or the same visitor in 3 times, or even more than that, or you put in somebody that's already a member of BNI, those aren't really visitors, those are guests, and that will artificially lower your conversion ratio. So be careful when you're doing the adding to Palms. You can change any information here if you need to. You do need to verify who invited them and click Submit. Now that visitor will get an email saying, thank you so much for coming to the meeting. You'll notice that John Smith has now been removed. Now, let's say John Smith registered twice. We can also delete this particular registration if we want to and keep our visitor registration list nice and clean. All right, now let's say the person did not pre-register for the meeting, and we still want to make sure that we record visitors' information after the meeting has happened. We can do that from here by just clicking on Add Visitor. And again, it's pretty much the same exact form all over again. Of course, if we go back to the Operations menu, we can also add a visitor this way. So from here, I could go to Manage Visitors and record a visitor. right? And if I need to, work on my visitor database, I want to keep it clean, get rid of people that have said, yeah, don't contact me anymore, things like that, I could always go into manage visitors in order to remove people. All right, so that's kind of the visitors process. So, again, from the invitation to the registration, then to the fact that they're being recorded after the meeting. All right, so let's take a look at the next part of the process. So another process that has to do with the meetings is, well, now we have the POMS report. So the POMS report, this is going to be under the meeting management piece. And if we click under meeting management, there are going to be three options here. We have the POMS, a view POMS summary, enter POMS, and view edit speakers. If I click on view POMS, this allows you to look at the data for any single POMS report. So not just this week or last week. I mean, I could go back, 10 years in time if I want to and look at the various reports. Right, so you will notice that there's a couple of different options here with the various POMS reports. There's draft and completed. Now, keep in mind, this is my Burr chapter up in Antarctica. So this is a test area. But the draft meetings means that those meetings have not been submitted yet. In other words, those meetings are not part of the official statistics for the chapter yet. So that means somebody started the report and didn't finish it, or what also happens is that if you're using the online slips, or again, in a couple of weeks, if you start using the BNI Connect app, the mobile app, to record your referrals and everything, what happens is it creates a draft POMS report and starts storing that data. But if nobody goes in and completes it, then it won't become part of the statistics. So we can, if you click on the word here, so let's say draft here from the 29th of June. Oops, click the wrong button there. Let me go back. Oops. Let's go back a couple of months here. So let's say I click on this particular draft from March 1st. I could click on that. This would show me all of the activity for that meeting. I could see the attendance, who was there, who wasn't, any remarks. On each one, there's also a thing called the SLIPS audit report, and the SLIPS audit report lets us see all of the online activity. So we can see here that Alfred E. Newman invited a visitor that week. The rest of the information was manually entered. All right, so the other thing is you can review them, but most of the time you're going to be going in to enter POMS reports. So entering POMS reports, we can click on Enter POMS. Now, the first thing you'll see when you're entering POMS reports is all of the visitors that were entered since the last time you went in to go and enter a POMS report. So I had just marked that visitor as attending a couple of minutes ago. So it's essentially asking me as the vice president or the person entering the POMS, do I want to accept this credit to the POMS? Right, so I'm being told here John Smith was invited by Joey. So Joey would get the visitor credit. Jeremy Walsh did the data entry, and they're said to have visited on the 5th of April. Do I want to add them? Yes or no? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Now, once I've completed approving or saying no to all of them, it'll immediately bring me to the Enter POMS screen. So I just need to choose the date. So I'm going to pretend we're in the future. Normally, you would not do this until after your meeting has ended. But I'm going to go ahead and click Enter POMS, and this now brings up essentially the POMS spreadsheet. And what you can see here is that Joey Tribbiani already has the credit for that visitor. The other thing you would see right away is that, again, if your chapter is using the online slips or using the mobile app, then you would see all of the stuff that they've entered electronically already in here. Give you a big push to go electronic. If your whole chapter is entering slips electronically, the only thing that you'll have to do is to take attendance. So rather than have to fill out this whole spreadsheet, the only thing you do is go down, mark attendance, and you are done. So let's look at that. Let's take a look at the POMS report itself. So what you'll see here is all the members down the left-hand side and then all of the different categories that we're tracking here. Let's just go through those. The POMS is the attendance. P-A-L-M-S. P stands for present, A is absent, L is late, M is medical, and S is substitute. So late would mean that they show up after open networking has already started. So if a meeting is, my personal chapter meeting, we meet on Thursdays from 7 to 8:30. So 7:01 would be considered late at that point. Absent is absent without a sub. Medical leave does need to be approved by the membership committee. It's not intended to be, oh, he had a cold this week. This is more for, long-term things like having knee surgery or having a child, something like that where they're going to be out for, 6 or 8 weeks. This is meant to preserve their membership category so that, the time will still click. It'll still accrue on them, but they don't have to worry about getting a sub, and they don't have to worry about losing their category. All right, RG. So you have these 4 R columns, RGI, RGO, RRI, RRO. What those are, that's the 4 different types of referrals, right? We have referrals given and referrals received because there's always 2 sides to every referral relationship, right? Referrals given and referrals received. And then we also have what's called an inside referral and an outside referral. So an inside referral is when 2 members do business with each other, right? So in other words, we haven't introduced anybody from the outside world into the relationship. We're doing business with each other. So in other words, the relationship stays inside the chapter. Okay? So, for example, if Albert Camus referred himself because, he wanted, I don't know, Johnny Depp to come and guest star at his daughter's, bar mitzvah, right? So that would be an inside referral given, and Johnny Depp would have an inside referral received, right? Because we're marking the giver and receiver of these referrals. Right, and outside referrals, you introduce anybody else. So Ricky Martin, his next door neighbor is having a backyard disco party and would like John Travolta to come and be a guest star. So that would be an outside referral from Ricky Martin to John Travolta. Again, visitors, hopefully if you're entering your visitors, the visitor credit will automatically come into the POMS report. If you're not entering your visitors, then you can just give the 1 credit here. One-to-ones, of course, is when 2 members meet with each other. So if Sally and Susie got together for a one-to-one, they would both get 1 credit for getting together for a one-to-one. Thank you for closed business. Of course, this is when a referral turns into business. We like to track the giver, right? We're tracking the giver's side of this, the person that's generating the revenue. So let's say that Adam Sandler generated $5,000 for somebody in the chapter. You can put that in there. And we do have to scroll over one, but we have one more column called CEUs. And again, that's the credit for doing things like this, right? So learning more about BNI or going to networking events, going to training events, member success programs, things like that. After you've filled out the spreadsheet, then you can give any remarks if you want to. Awesome energy in the room today. I think the visitor might join. All right, so whatever you'd like to put in as a memorial to that meeting, you can do that. And then finally at the bottom, we have 4 different options. So the first one is submit POMS. That is simply, I'm done with this one. We're good to go. we're going to record this. We're finalizing it. This is now part of the chapter's history. It will count towards all of the statistical reports and traffic lights and all that stuff. That just finalizes it. Mark as holiday. So that's a special one. So let's say that your chapter, or my chapter, for example, we meet on Thursdays. At least 1 week a year, Thanksgiving, which is always on a Thursday, we don't get together as a chapter. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we kind of take that week's meeting out of the rotation, right? So the way we do that is we mark it as a holiday. Now, if you're using the online slips, if you're using the mobile app, all of that activity that would have been in this week's meeting will actually get pushed to next week's meeting, right? So it's really important that if your chapter doesn't meet, whether it's because of a snowstorm, or whether it's because of a typhoon, or whether it's because of a holiday, immediately after, as close as you can to after the meeting would have happened, go in and click Mark as Holiday, and that way it pushes all of that activity to the next week's meeting. All right, save as draft. One thing to keep in mind is there is a 30-minute timeout in BNI Connect. So if you're on a page and you're not doing anything for more than 30 minutes, let's say that you're sitting there, you're counting out the POMS report, and you get a really important call from a client, and you walk away from your computer for a half hour, or you open another tab and forget about this one for a while, you will lose everything and have to start over. So if you're going to be walking away, you're not doing this, get in the habit of saving it as a draft and then coming back and finishing it later. Now, if you completely screw everything up and you put things in the wrong columns, or you think there's an error or something like that, if you click Discard POMS, that will wipe the slate clean and you get to start over again. If there was online activity, online referrals, things like that, that will be regenerated and put automatically into the POMS. But I'm going to go ahead and submit this one. All right, and this will just give us our review. And that's really all there is to it. If you made a mistake, on the view, you can usually see the Unlock POMS option in order to go back in and make corrections. All right, so that's the POMS report. The rest of the stuff under operations is really, really straightforward and easy to do. For example, under meeting management, usually it's the secretary-treasurer that's going to go in and put in the speaker rotation once every 6 weeks or so. Really, all you do is go to View Edit Speakers. Once you get these into the system, you can start using this as a history as well. We can't backdate any speakers, but the other good thing about putting the speakers into BNI Connect, number one, they will show on your chapter website. Number two, they will get a reminder. So 3 days and 6 days before they're speaking. So, Jamie and QWERTY here, they would have gotten reminders saying, hey, you're speaking this week. Make sure that you're prepared. Make sure you bring a door prize. To assign a speaker, you just click Assign Speaker. Choose the date that they're going to speak. Let's say that we're doing the next month's calendar out. We're going to have Jacob Goodwin talk on the 12th about, web pages. You can put their category in or something like that and click Submit. And now Jacob is scheduled for the 12th. If somebody needs to change the date, you can delete them and then put a new person in their place. Right now, because of the way this was built, we don't have the ability to shift the rotation, which, to be completely honest with you, is usually not the best idea anyway. It usually ends up messing everybody up, for the next 6 or 7 weeks that thought they were speaking on a week and didn't hear that everybody shifted, or things like that. So it's usually good to just replace somebody and keep the rotation the same. All right, the other functions under here, the mentoring program, you can assign mentors and mentees by using the mentoring program. This is very similar to the speaker rotation, and you just choose a date that they're going to start this mentoring program, and who's going to be the mentor, who's going to be the mentee. And all this does is it schedules them for a weekly email to let them know where they should be in the mentoring process. All right, the rest of the stuff on here I'm not really going to go into today. We actually did a webinar yesterday going through the whole goals program, which was a great thing to be able to track your goals through the year. And the manage news function is a very specialized function that we don't really have a chance to get into today. And finally, manage memberships. Not a lot of regions have their leadership teams do this, and they usually have very special processes when they do. So I'm not really going to touch on that today. But is there any other you guys have any questions on the stuff that we covered so far with the POMS report and the visitor process and the speaker rotation and things like that? I'd be happy to answer those questions now, or we can answer them at the end. All right. So if there's no questions, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the reports in the system. Oh, hold on a second. Elsie says, who has access to operations? Well, to answer that question, pretty much everybody. It's the way that permissions work in BNI Connect is that, depending on your level of access, certain things will appear and or not appear. Let me see if I can show you an example here. So I have, for example, I'm going to log in this other window. This is one of my members in Antarctica in the BNI Burr chapter, Marky Mark from the Funky Bunch. So when Marky Mark logs in, this is his normal home screen. Everybody pretty much sees the same home screen. He still has operations, but when he goes there, for example, he can only register a prospective visitor. So whereas when I'm in as me, on the other hand, I can record a visitor, manage visitors, register a prospective, and manage registered visitors. He can go to the manage goals, but he can only view what the leadership team has put in for the goals. He can't enter them. He can still use the create email to email my chapter and email visitor invitations, but he doesn't, have the other things that are here, like the manage news function and the mentoring program. Under meeting management, they can view an individual summary, but they can't go in and enter a POMS summary, for example. So does that help explain a little bit, Elsie, how the permissions work? All right, so when it comes to reports, let's take a look at some of the reports in the system. And I'm only going to go through probably about 5 or 6 of my favorite reports, though I'm happy to answer questions on any of them. All right, now I know it's going to look like I'm going to go through all the reports because actually most of my favorite reports are right there at the top of the sheet. So let's take a look at these. First one here, the member training report. Now this one is, again, pretty straightforward. It's going to show you who took a training at any given time. And actually, you know what? I'm going to switch here. I'm going to get out of Antarctica. And I'm going to go to my chapter because this always makes a little bit more sense to look at some real statistics and some real data. So here we are. So the member training report, again, I could pick a certain training to find out, who's taken a certain training in my chapter and when they took it. But I think that the more important application to this is, if you're, for example, getting the speaker rotation ready, one of the requirements to do a weekly 10-minute presentation, feature presentation at your chapter, is that they would have to have taken the MSP, the Member Success Program. So we can check that by clicking on Show Never Attended, right? And then we choose the Member Success Program. And if they are on this list, they should not be doing a feature presentation. They should not be giving, one of the big, long 10-minute presentations. They can still do their weekly presentation. It'll also show you when they joined and even their phone number so that you can give them a call and tell them, hey, how come you haven't taken the Member Success Program yet? All right, so that's the member training report. The next couple of these are fairly obvious in their usage. The chapter roster report, this is going to show you, well, your chapter roster, so all the people in your chapter. Now, down at the bottom is going to be all the members, but at the top where I find this report even more helpful is it shows you your leadership team. Elsie, the question you just had a couple of minutes ago about permissions. Um, permissions are usually assigned based on a role that they're given. So all these roles here at the top. So, if you're, let's say that you're the president of your chapter and you're, really looking to make sure that that the visitors process is being followed, and your visitor host comes back to you and says, hey, I can't enter anything into BNI Connect. Why are you giving me such a hard time? Well, the first thing that you want to check, come here and make sure that they are listed as a visitor host, because if they're not listed as a visitor host, they don't have the permissions necessary to do the data entry piece in BNI Connect. Same thing if you're the vice president, you go to enter their first POMS report and you realize, hey, I don't have this access. Go check out the roster report and see if you're actually listed as the vice president. All right, the other thing on here is it does show you all of your members, their classification, their phone number, and also the data for the last 90 days. Essentially, this is the POMS reports for the last 90 days. Now, as a leadership team, one of the things that we do need to do is to mentor our members a little bit. So look for some red flags in this little 90-day window here. For example, maybe people that, in 90 days, which is 3 months, about 12 weeks, have they given many referrals? Have they received many referrals? Or more importantly, have they done any one-to-ones? I mean, if you're shooting for the power of one, you should have somewhere 10, 12, 13 one-to-ones in the past 90 days. But if you're maybe having one or two or three, that might be something that you want to make sure that you're talking to your members about in order to help them. Better yet, reach out to one of them and do a one-to-one with them. The membership dues report, this is really helpful, especially to vice presidents, membership committees, secretary treasurers, especially because you're reviewing a lot of memberships. So this is going to show you when people are due for renewal, and it's putting it in that order. So right now it's going to show us in bold the next 2 months of people. So these are people that are due in May 1st and June 1st. Anybody that's late or expired or dropped would appear down at the bottom of this list. Now, the obvious ones are these ones in bold, because those are the people that should be, they're really in the middle of the renewal process right now. And, we're just at that last step of, oh yeah, are we accepting them? Are we not accepting them? But especially as a membership committee person, it's really important that we're looking further than that. So, we really want to be reviewing people that are about 6 months out. So right now, we're in April 1st, so we're really looking 6 months, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. So really November is the people that we want to look at. So really the people that are due in October, November, December, those people, if they're struggling, they haven't made their decision yet whether or not they're going to renew in BNI. And if they're not getting enough referrals, or they're struggling to do one-to-ones, or they need more training, now is the time to have those conversations with them, because we can still help them. We can still guide them. We can still consult with them in order to help them improve. Waiting until it's 2 weeks before their renewal, it's kind of too late at that point to make any behavioral changes. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this membership dues report, to be looking to consult with those people that are about 6 months out. All right, the meeting notes report, this is a great way to just be able to, take notes during the meeting. So this is meant to be printed, and you can just print this out, and it allows people to take notes while members are giving their weekly presentations. A great way to help people to become better referral givers. Summary POMS report, this is our, kind of our bread and butter statistical report here in BNI. Now, by default, most of the reports in the system that have to do with statistics and whatnot, they're going to show you the last completed 6 months. It's just, the rolling 6 months that we're looking at. So we're right now looking at April through October. I'm sorry, the October through the end of March. That's our last 6-month period. However, you're not locked into that 6-month period. You can look at any any date range you want to. I mean, I can go back, let's say, to 2013. Let's say I want to look at the last, 5 years worth of data, 2012, so April of 2012 through April 1st, 2017. I can look at all 5 years of history. If I click go, this will, of course, show me, all of the people that are currently in my chapter and what their contributions have been over the last 5 years. One thing to keep in mind, if you try to summarize these, this total at the bottom will not add up, okay? Very important. The report totals include contributions from dropped members. So we're just hiding them from the list, but we want you to see the full chapter totals. Now, that said, another great little source is if I go to show dropped member names. If you want to see all of the people that have been in your chapter over the last 5 years, I mean, we all lose people from the chapter. Some people, I know we lost our tree guy, person that, goes around cutting down trees and things like that. We lost our tree guy because he was actually growing too fast and he couldn't keep up with the growth. He had to train his employees, and he couldn't afford to continue to grow at that rate without putting some infrastructure in place. So, he left the chapter, but that was probably about 9 months or a year ago. We're coming up on spring. It's going to be another busy season. We might want to invite him back to the chapter, right? We like to say that, once we have BNI in our blood here, we're BNI for life, and maybe you want to look through this and take a look and look for some people that, get reminded of someone that was there 3 or 4 years ago that was a really good member that maybe you want to invite back, or you can even just invite him back as a guest or a substitute. All right, another thing you'll notice is the absence report will go to exactly the last 6 months, and that is because we are now doing a rolling 6 months as far as absences go in BNI. That's how we're tracking them. Now, that report that's on your home screen, that My BNI Business, there's also a report called the Personal Palms where you can run that same report for anybody in your chapter. That's a good way to help and review their membership. It's also a great way to find errors if there are any errors that you need to look up. All right, so for the Secretary Treasurers, one other quick report is the Member Details Report. When somebody's giving their feature presentation, we want to be able to introduce them. If they have filled out their bio here in BNI Connect, then you can go to the Member Details Report, go to View Member Bio. You can choose the person from the drop-down list. And now this is the same thing that we used to hand out in paper form and ask them to fill out. This is all that same detail. All right, and of course we have the visitor registration report, we have traffic lights, we have palms, tons of reports. My recommendation to you, by the way, is you can't break anything in reports, right, because they're read-only. So please feel free to go through, take a look at the reports and see what you discover. All right, now what I want to do is I'm going to open this up to questions in just a minute. Before we do that, I'm going to show you one more really helpful trick, and that is if we go back to our home screen, you'll notice you have My BNI Business, My Network, again, which has all this stuff, and then you have a thing that says Chapter Shortcuts. What the Chapter Shortcuts are is you can customize this list to have in it whatever you want. So anything that you have access to in BNI Connect, you can put into this shortcut list. And you do that by clicking Configure. Now, anything in this left-hand list is what's in your shortcut menu. Anything in this right-hand list is everything that you have access to. So, let's say that I want to make sure I have the membership dues report, right? I can also drag that up to the top of my list right here. Let's say I want the absence report. I'm going to run that all the time. I can also drag that up where I want it in the list. Maybe the meeting notes report is going to go below that, and the visitor registration, I'm going to move that up towards the top. So you can really play with that and make it your own. You can take things out of the list by clicking the X button. It'll come back over here on the right. Or if you want to just go with the default, click on Restore Defaults. Once I click Submit, and then close out of this window. This is going to refresh and just show me my shortcut list. You'll see it's now reordered to my own personal order. And the cool thing is that there's no screen refresh between going through these. So instead of going to operations, chapter, create email, email my chapter, I can just go here and go email my chapter. Boom, done. I now have the email addresses and can copy and paste them. So that, my friends, is the leadership team tools and reports. Again, I'd like to open this up to any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, complaints, compliments, whatever you'd like. I'd love to hear it all. In the meantime, if you're thinking of any other questions, just a reminder, this is part of a series of webinars. We have our very next webinar is going to be on Thursday, April 6th, a couple of days from now. We're going to be talking about the online renewal process. Then on next week, on Tuesday, we're going to talk about chapter web pages. Then we are going to go into our member series of webinars. So a good referral for me is if you found this to be helpful, please let your other chapter members know about these webinars, especially the member webinars. So Lindsay says, how can I find the recording? So the recording will probably be put up a little bit later this week. It takes me a couple of days to get them converted into the right format for YouTube and update them and things like that. So you'll be able to find them. If you go to right here, you see on the upper right-hand corner, there's this question mark. Click that question mark. That question mark will take you to the support site. Here you'll also find the BNI Resource Center, which has tons of downloadable documents and things like that. We also have live and recorded webinars. Under live and recorded webinars, you'll see an April series appear here shortly. And I will, get that up there. It's probably going to be towards the end of the week before I get those uploaded. But you can always look at, for example, the February series of webinars, and you can check out the leadership team tools and reports from the February one, which it's very similar. We have different people on each one, so we have different questions that get asked and slightly different focuses based on those questions, but you can find it there. You can also find everything that we have up on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/BNI Connect Global, this has everything up there. So, little education moments as well that you can use in your chapter and our archive of things going back in time. All right, Tom says, very good job. Covered a lot of areas to make the jobs easier for us. One other thing I didn't mention earlier, but that's really helpful, is that one of the reasons I teach it this way, as opposed to, let's say, let's just have a vice president one. Again, different regions do things differently, but by default, most of the permissions in BNI Connect are set up that the leadership team all has the same level of access to BNI Connect for the most part. So you'll notice that you're logged in as a president right now. You probably can see operations, chapter, meeting management, enter POMS report, right? Because one of the beauties of that is, like, let's say that the vice president is normally the one that's doing that in your chapter, and the vice president goes on holiday for 2 weeks. There's no reason for everything to get locked up just because the vice president's not there. The president or the secretary treasurer can jump in and enter those POMS reports for a couple of weeks until they get back. And same thing for the speaker rotation and the visitors and all that kind of stuff. So generally speaking, it becomes a shared responsibility to help each other out. We work as a team. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. If there's no other session, no other sessions, Elsie just said excellent session. If there's no other questions, yeah, thank you guys so much for taking an hour out of your day. I know everybody's busy entrepreneurs out there. You probably have 100 emails to return and phone calls and everything else. Thank you for the dedication that you've shown to your chapter and all the great that you're going to do in your chapters this upcoming leadership team season. So I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. And in the meantime, happy connecting.